Ça va? Yeah. So it's been a fantastic conference, and well done to World DAB. Well done to World DAB. They know how to organise an event, and like all good event organisers, they save the best for last. And this is this amazing panel. I work for Radioplayer. I'm Director of Automotive Partnerships, and this is really exciting because we're going to talk about the research that Megan showed us earlier. Radioplayer, we focus on the user experience, and we were a partner, along with many others, in the first round of consumer research that World DAB did in 2021. Now, this research is slightly different. I don't think it's directly comparable. There was a quantitative element, but there was also the video stuff that Megan showed, and that's the real star of this research. The one thing that is consistent is that we were talking to either recent car buyers or prospective car buyers, and that's worth remembering as we discuss this. So we're going to take a few minutes just to talk about the research, some of those findings, and also how we can continue to collaborate as broadcasters and car manufacturers on improving the radio user experience. So welcome, guys. Megan, let's just start with you. Obviously, we've had a couple of presentations in between what you said. Can you just recap those main findings for us very briefly?
Sure. There's reach, friction, and essential. So radio has the most reach in the car. Removing friction helps with user satisfaction, and radio is really good in the friction department. And then essential, people see radio as an essential part of the car experience.
So I think that's where, and I think some of the statistics in the quantitative element were also things like people wouldn't want to buy a car that didn't have a radio, so quite consistent with what we saw in 2021. With regards to the video element, which I think is really interesting, the consumers in the car using the radio, obviously there's a lot of research there. Are there any elements that you didn't present that are also interesting that you could cover now?
Gosh, I had 30 hours of interviews to go through, so a lot. There's questions about voice commands. There were questions about conversations about Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and then a really cool finding. I've done in-car research before, but this has never really come up. Is when a passenger is in a car, how does that change your listening experience? And we found that radio is kind of the common denominator. Like maybe a young person listens to their favorite station or Spotify, but when they're in the car, they want radio as an option because it's something that makes everyone happy. Oh, we'll put on the pop station because everyone can enjoy that. So I really liked that idea of radio being the thing that everyone can agree on.
And what about when people first get into the car? They get in, and maybe in unfamiliar cars, how they interact with the dashboard. Was there anything in that?
Yeah, well, that's actually one of the things we did was we asked people, as soon as they got in the car, okay, tell me everything that you do before you drive. People said, I adjust the mirror, I play with the temperature, I make sure my seat position is right, and then I make sure the radio's on, or I make sure my audio is on. So while people mentioned different things, what was consistent across all interviews was audio. You don't start moving until you have that ready. And in some cases it was really easy. It was the station that was on before. So it's just, I turn on the car and my music's already playing. Or it's a click or two because I feel like listening to sport or something like that. But that was really cool, where everyone, whether they were in their car or an unfamiliar car, could recall, oh yeah, well now I gotta find my station. That's something that I do before I drive.
Okay. Gregor, maybe coming to you, one of the reasons that World DAB conducted this research was to try and understand some of the positives, but also the challenges about the user experience, and how they could be improved. So that's talking to broadcasters and car manufacturers. From a car manufacturer, or at least tech provider perspective, what are some of the sort of the most important lessons from what you've seen in this research, and how will you use it back at CARIAD and also with the VW Group brands?
Yeah, basically we faced the issue that it's all different. Every customer is a little different, and we always face the topic, like a lot of the people already said, young ones only need Spotify, which is actually not the case, but this is the perceived reality. Every young one only needs Spotify and Android Auto, just to make it a little more abstract. But what they really want is to have it their way, like personalized, and also have it very easy. But we use the last research, and we will also use this one, because it's really coming across that radio is important, and it's still worth to invest money on this legacy topic, because this is like all about money, and radio is considered legacy. Yeah, leave it like it is. But no, this is also why I'm in the user experience group. It's always about improving the experience for the user.
And that's a key point, because one of the things we've heard consistently from our friends in car manufacturers is that not every colleague within those car manufacturer groups is necessarily convinced about the need to invest in radio and ensuring the radio experience is as good as it can be. I think WorldDAB felt, and the people within the steering board that were involved, that the video element of this, so showing people interacting with the dashboard, would be really important in convincing some of those maybe colleagues who aren't as close to radio. Do you think that's the case? Do you think you'll be able to take that back and show them how things could be better?
Yeah, of course, because you can write a lot of text, show a lot of slides, but really convey the experience, because then I can really say, no, that's not my opinion. This is real people talking to you or to anyone I want to convey this message, because it's not the radio tech guy Gregor saying, yeah, I like radio. You also need this other visual from the real customers, because yeah, sometimes even in the biggest brands, they forget to ask the customers. So that's really big and helpful topic to visualize what the actual customer needs are.
Can I add one thing on
that
topic? I've done, I've presented research in Manhattan to media planners, and they're all young professionals who live and work in the city, and they're like, oh, everyone just listens to Spotify. And like, no, you are in a bubble, and a lot of people making decisions in media and in design are in this bubble, the city bubble, and that's not what the rest of the world is like. They're in cars and and moving around, and just the experience is completely different, and that's why you need the research, you need the videos.
100%. I know this room, and I think this group understands that getting radio right in the car is a collaboration between the broadcasters and the car manufacturers. Eugenio, from a broadcaster perspective, what were your main takeaways from what you've seen in Megan's research, and what we should be doing with those?
Sure, I will come back to my CEO, and I will say the 86% of the people continue to listen to the radio, so I continue to get money at the end of the month. No, I'm joking, but this is a very important number. So I mean that when I was telling you about young generation and Spotify, I'm totally sure about what Gregor said. That is a perception. So I mean that they feel that we are not sexy. But in a way they use it. They use us in terms of entertainment. But if we are able also to become sexy, and this marketing, creation, experience, so on, we can survive for three millions of years. I mean that we cannot stop. I mean that's the point. We have to think about the perception, because the generation change, the people become older and new generation coming, and so we cannot, if the 86% become 70, 60, blah, 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 we lost. But if we continue to develop something for the new generation that go on, it's our win. And Another point that I think that is very important is if I remember well, was 91% about the simplicity of the radio. You click one button and you go directly to the content, and it's something that is prominence. And honestly, it's not so sure that we can keep the prominence into the dashboard. I mean that we are working for, and we continue to working for all together in different tables, that is European Commission, with the car automotive, internally with the people that work with the radio. So it's a strong battle, but it's the only way to keep the radio. Also because we have to think that we are doing something for us, for our generation. I mean that Spotify is very beautiful, but it's owned by someone that is using a unique company. The radio is millions of identity, culture, sport, people, and it's live. What is important that we don't speak about this topic that Spotify is on demand. In general, we are live 24 hours a day. And into the research, we see that the people love to have something that is live, because create company, so you have someone that you feel not alone into the car or somewhere, and you have the fresh news, you have a lot of information. So it's a value, but we have to continue to spread the value of the radio.
That point you make on prominence is interesting. I learned from the video that all we need to say to car manufacturers now is that a car without a radio that's easy to find is like a shopping trolley without wheels. That was the quote that jumped out at us. Do you think, I mean, Gregor, I know that CARIAD and VW Group do a very good job, but do you think that message comes through very clearly and that we should be using that in terms of keeping radio prominent and strong in the dashboard?
Yeah, I think even we are not ready for this topic, because you always have new markets evolving with DAB and in other parts of the world.
Micro.
This one? Can you hear me? Yes, yeah. Okay. So basically it's not a one-off solution, make France happy and you are done. No, you really have to work hard on the development of the user experience, and it's also very important why we need this research and why we need World DAB to be here, because I can do anything. Of course, I can read the standards and do something what I imagine, but that would be the big fail in the first place if you don't talk to all the parties, because radio is not Gregor and some hardware device. Radio is all of you guys. It's all the broadcasters. It's different device manufacturers. And it's also aggregators, because only us together make this user experience. I can't do anything if I don't get all the nice stuff for the audio, for the nice feel back to our cars. So let's keep rocking this.
I love that. We'll keep rocking it. Just one final question, maybe to you, Megan, because I think there was also something in the research about voice and people using voice. Can you just say a little bit about that and what you saw?
Yeah, funnily enough, I said one of the things we didn't touch on was the Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. People are trained to use voice commands on their phone now. First, Amazon Alexa came into their house. There's actually some other research that I've done in this category of voice assistants where people get the Alexa or the Google Home in their home, and then they start using the device, and then that technology, and that trains them to do it on their phone. So now people are trained to use voice commands on their phone, and now they bring their phone into their car and they want to use voice commands in their car. So a lot of them, those who are connected to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay or just had their phone connected to the dashboard, they're using the voice controls through their phone. And they enjoy that experience. But guess what you can't access easily with voice commands on your phone? Radio. So that's a problem. That's a big problem. And I was excited to hear the panel before the break about the partnership with Android Auto, because hopefully that's all part of the discussion to make sure radio is accessible on those devices. Certainly you can, and the manufacturers are working on voice commands within their own ecosystems as well. That's certainly helpful, and people are being trained to use this technology, so we need to make sure that it's easy for them to access radio, and anytime there's voice command technology.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe Eugenio, a final word, because I know we're almost out of time. We've talked about collaboration a lot, and how would you want to see this research used in terms of improving things and collaborating between broadcasters and the car manufacturers?
Well, there is a big topic, I think. The point is that if we would like to work with the automotive brand, we have to cooperate not only between us and as a single brand and them, because we know how they work in terms of building the devices and spreading to the market. That is a big market. So they can accept our consideration only if arrive from not a national radio, but a global radio. I mean that we have to think as a radio sector globally. And globally we have to find which are our idea in terms of enhancement of the radio, and I'm sure if we arrive as a complete sector of the radio and say, we think that could be useful for us in terms of enhance the experience, they can accept. So that's the only point where we can work.
Okay, listen, I think we're out of time, but I have to say, I think it's been a fantastic piece of research from Edison and World DAB. I think it's important to remember the really positive things that have come out of it, first and foremost, which are about the value and importance placed on radio, broadcast radio, by consumers in the car, drivers in the car, passengers. The fact that radio needs to be prominent and easy to access, and we need to get rid of some of the friction. I think it's also important that World DAB and others, we take away some of the videos, a lot of which we haven't seen in the presentation today, about the frustrations and things we need to improve. And that's where, within this kind of forum, we can do a lot more. But thank you to the amazing panel. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, everyone. Now, maybe let's have some questions from the audience. So you could stay here, please. I mean, there might be other questions, but anyone maybe? Because we have some online, but well, you know what? Just in the meantime, I'll ask one online, and if you want to raise your hand anytime, just do not hesitate. I have a question for Gregor. Do you think that the research is useful for the car industry? This is from online.
Yeah, of course, like I said already, it's very important because me as the tech guy, I can only say something, but if I go to my business director and why do you need additional money for radio? Then I have to say, it's not me, it's our customers all over the world saying this, so we need to improve here and there to make it happen.
Good. Megan, one for you. What was the most surprising thing that came out of the research?
Oh,
you have a lot of insights that you didn't tell us. So
yeah, surprising. I mentioned the passenger thing. I just thought that was eye-opening in terms of co-listening. And actually, I've done co-listening studies for digital audio brands where they want to know not just how many people are listening, but if you add how many people are listening with that other person, how does that boost our numbers? So that was really cool. That certainly we know radio is something a lot of people can listen to together, but the fact that people are choosing radio because it makes everyone happy was a new angle I hadn't seen in radio appreciation.
Yeah, that's a good one. One question here. You want a mic, maybe? Just. Oh, there's a mic here. Okay, everywhere. Fine.
It's Nick from Radio DNS. Megan, you had two cohorts. You had a cohort of people who were in their own cars and a cohort of people who you put into brand new cars they'd never sat in before. And we know that one of the things that people really, really wanted from their radio was to be able to use it simply. Did you notice a big difference between the people who'd been using their own radio for a while and those people who got into the car for the first time, how did they find using the radio?
You know, it's funny. Actually, this you can put this down as surprising. In some cases, the people in the unfamiliar cohort were able to find things a little easier because they knew they're unfamiliar. Like, they were just looking at the operating system for the first time. And then if I asked someone to listen to a station they've never listened to before in their car that they're familiar with, I could think of, one woman's like, oh, well, I always just listen to this station. This is my station. So she didn't even know how to, move from FM to DAB because her husband always puts his station on and she always has her station on. So there wasn't that much of a difference because we're talking about radio, really. And I don't want to call out any brands. There was one brand in particular that the interface was a lot more digital, and that was in the unfamiliar cohort that maybe people struggled with a little bit more.
That's great, thank you, thanks.
Anyone? Just checking. Okay, so one last for Eugenio. You mentioned, well, as well as Megan, but the importance of young people to digital radio. What would your message to VMs and broadcasters be to capture this audience in the future?
We make an experience that is quite successful in our country, and we launched one radio that is Radio Zeta, and it's a radio made by young people for young people. It's important that on the other side of the microphone we also create content produced by young people with their kind of communication. And so it's the radio for the generation Zeta, sorry for the Italian, by the way. And yes, I think that we have to build content that are well fitted for them, and also the point that we can create experience on top of that. But the content are the king of the radio. So.
An interesting thing about this generation, we just finished with some Gen Z research, is a good portion of Gen Z consider themselves content creators.
Yeah.
They are all content creators. They all want to be YouTubers or podcasters or influencers. So in some ways, they're really smart when it comes to content, and it's very smart to put them on the air, give them a voice.
We put on the air, if we can add the point, and obviously we have to use all the kind of spreading of the content. So I mean that the social network become important because are integral part of the content. So you have to play in all the places, but at the end you have to let the communication done by young people for young people.
Thank you. Well, that was really, we were passionate about all those topics today. Thank you to our speakers, really. Thank you very much.